Welcome everyone to Inside Academia, the weekly program where we take a look behind the ivory curtain, seeking a frank discussion of American education. I'm your host, Andy Nash. My guest today is Dr. Paul Gottfried, teaching for over 40 years at various colleges. Dr. Gottfried is a Horace Raffensperger Professor of Humanities currently at Elizabethtown College in Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania. He's been teaching there since 1989. He's also a Guggenheim recipient. He's about to publish a book on Leo Strauss and the American Right, a critical appraisal by Cambridge University Press, and he's also president of the H.L. Mencken Club. Dr. Paul Gottfried, welcome to Inside Academia.
I'm glad to be here.
I would like to begin talking to you today to get your assessment about the past 40 years of your experience in teaching in American colleges and universities. Most recently, there was a controversy at your college at Elizabethtown in which there was an event that took place on campus for which you published an article in tackymag.com. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened and what the controversy was about?
Well, the controversy, I should point out, is not unusual, would not be unusual at an American university or college today. And perhaps, my college has been behind the curve because we have been afflicted with this multicultural fixation, this concern with designated victims, teaching diversity in all of our classes. Only relatively recently, I suspect that at more prominent universities, these trends set in a long time ago. But this particular incident began when the college seemed to be intent on going after a person who had put up a note on a bulletin board which was there because of Black History Month. And the students were told that a man named Jan Matling, who was a minor inventor from Dutch Guiana, who was mostly Dutch but had some black ancestors, was an important inventor whose accomplishments as a black inventor we were to celebrate on February the 11th. And the student put up a note indicating that this was the birthday of Thomas Alva Edison, and the only reason we were not noticing this much greater inventor was the accident of his white birth. I wrote an article. It was a generally sarcastic article,
right.
Which perhaps I should not have done, because it created a great deal of bitterness against me at the point that I was ready to leave college. And it also created particular bitterness in the social work and education departments, which have been in the forefront of pushing the multicultural agenda on campus. But I pointed out that with this person, who was now the object of a witch hunt on campus because his identity had not been revealed, what he had done seemed to me to be entirely justified. He was simply asking why it is that we do not celebrate a famous white inventor, whereas we exaggerate the importance of a mulatto inventor or somebody that may have been only 1/4 black, but was seen as an appropriate object of worship during that day in Black History Month. And that really opened up a whole can of worms, and people came after me on the grounds that I was belittling Black History Month, which in fact I was doing. And I did not have enough respect for the diversity program on campus. My views on the diversity program on campus were well known because I imposed the attempt to introduce diversity at our college, something which I think has been a curse because it keeps getting worse. And the attempt to implement this diversity project has involved more and more time being spent celebrating black victims, gay victims, women victims, and talking about the need to overcome white, male, Western Christian prejudices or whatever. It does not go away. But in any case, I will be going away because I'll be leaving the college within the next month.
Now, are you retiring because of this incident, or are you retiring just because you're at that point in life where you're about to retire anyway?
Well, I think it's there have been perhaps a variety of factors which influenced my decision to leave. One of which is it's obvious the administration doesn't want me, and I was sort of pushed into semi-retirement 2 years ago. The other factor that influenced my decision is that I've simply grown tired of teaching. I probably grew tired of teaching about 25 years ago, but I just sort of stayed in the game until now. The combination of political correctness on our campuses and the lack of any real interest in learning among the students we recruit, the vast majority of the students, together, I think, sort of influenced my decision. So, I am leaving. I have no regrets about leaving. And I have no desire ever to enter a classroom again.
Well, you said a lot of things, though. Let's try to
unpack my sentences.
Yeah, let's do that. First, going back to the incident itself. So essentially, you wrote a sarcastic critique of what had happened, but as you point out, though, could have happened in any other university, and often has and does. But as a result, they didn't know who put that question on the door or whatever it was, or the bulletin board. But since you wrote about the incident in a sarcastic way, taking a shot at the whole program, they had somebody to go after. So what specifically was the reaction against you, per se? What was said to you, what was done to you at your college?
Well, I think in my article I was indiscreet enough to mention that multiculturalism serves a number of functions, one of which is to provide a bogus education for students who have no interest in learning foreign languages or doing anything serious to show their interest in cultures beyond the very limited pop culture in which they live. And what education and social work students are now allowed to do is to run around demonstrating for minorities, making noise against prejudice on our campus, and trying to enforce political correctness as an academic exercise. And I specifically designated students in these programs, which I think was my blunder. And the students in these what I call low quality vocational programs and those who instruct them have been treating me as an outcast ever since.
Let me ask you this. There's I found online in the, I guess your school newspaper, the E-Townian, I guess it's called. There was an alumnus by the name of Michael Hillman who responded to your article. This appeared back in March of 2011. And he said that during his time at E-Town, he basically said that you had inspired him in one crucial way. You challenged him to question his fundamental beliefs right down to the core. So he apparently valued that, but for the most part, he said he found your views overall to be detestable. And he also said, and I want you to elaborate on how this ties into higher education today, the line that I think is key is he said, the mission of Elizabethtown College does not seem to fit with the worldview endorsed by Gottfried, and as such, many would argue he does not belong. But I say not so fast, and he stuck up for you and said that you actually challenged him to think. So this, I want to springboard off of this point. The university or the college seems to have a worldview, as he says, that is no longer compatible. In fact, it's very contradictory and incompatible with your worldview and the worldview of many who think like yourself, who are very critical of what these movements have become by today's day and age in terms of multiculturalism, diversity, political correctness, and how they've become political advocacy movements rather than genuine academic exercises in free inquiry and open thought. So can you elaborate on that, and how has the college come to this, or any college come to this point in time that it is all the things that you say for why you say you're finally ready to retire?
Yeah, it's very hard to elaborate. Actually, you elaborated on my view better than I would be able to express it in the next 5 minutes. But, I wrote a series of works, scholarly works, dealing with this problem. I think a number of things have come together that have created the ideology, the regnant ideology of our universities, including Elizabethtown College, which is only a very, very small part of the total picture. The state has been pushing through anti-discrimination law and its weird notion of fairness, the idea that one should not be allowed to discriminate in ways that the state does not approve of discrimination. the state and the media. But the other thing, of course, is that the importance of the media, which I call in my books the priesthood of the managerial state, which have created the ideology or sustained the ideology and instill the ideology, which you find in my school. Finally, public education has, not simply finally, public education is another means by which these ideas are propagated and enforced. And finally, religion. The liberalization of Christianity has been an important factor in the triumph of multicultural ideology. Together, what I call is the politics of guilt, in which Christian metaphysical guilt has been transformed into social guilt. I think all these factors come together. If any one of these factors could be removed, then the chances for the total triumph of this ideology would be rendered smaller. One of the factors I'm always stressing in my work is the state. The modern managerial democratic state pulls out all stops to impose multicultural idea, whether it's taxing policy, whether it's hiring policy, whether it's anti-discrimination, anti-harassment, etc. The state is always in your face. And by the state, I mean the federal and the state governments. Mm-hmm. So that, I mean, colleges are very often dancing to the tune that is being played by the government. Another factor is accreditation agencies. The Middle Atlantic Accreditation Agency, to which our own college is subject, in order to maintain its accreditation, pushes multiculturalism. It mandates the hiring of minorities, the introduction of multicultural programs at school. So for all these reasons, I think Michael Hillman has nothing to fear. He is on the winning side right now, now and for the foreseeable future.
Well, just allow me to quickly ask you, to somebody that hasn't studied this stuff, or does not work in this environment, they hear the word multiculturalism, and to them it connotes a benign meaning. In other words, they say, well, what's your problem with a plurality or a diversity of different cultures, people of different backgrounds? Don't they bring different perspectives to the table? The world is diversifying in every sense. You have to work with different folks from all kinds of places. Why not? Why oppose that? What precisely is it about that you find troublesome or that you oppose?
Well, first of all, it is coercive. It is not something that you have any choice about. It is being imposed from the top by the state, by the organization for which you work, by the presence of trial lawyers and others, and by courts that are willing to entertain these suits about discrimination. Number two, not all groups are going to be treated with equal tolerance. If I were a Southern white saying, well, don't I have a right to fly a Confederate flag? The answer would be go to hell, and you're committing a hate crime. Obviously, Armenian, Oriental Orthodox Christians do not have the same rights as, let's say, a black lesbian would. There are certain groups that are designated as historical victims that are being given this right, usually at the expense of other groups, usually at the expense of what was once the majority white Christian group in the United States. If you're a woman, you're allowed to insult a man who discriminates against you. If you're a man and you insult a woman, gay, you're allowed to insult heterosexuals, but not heterosexuals do not have the same right to insult gays. So we have as a whole victimizing hierarchy enforced by the government, enforced by the media, enforced by the institution for which you're working. So it is not a matter of simply adopting an international or cosmopolitan perspective or being nice to everybody. It is a matter of groups being treated unequally and having the state enforce this hierarchy of victims on everybody else.
Now, so specifically, how does it tie into universities?
Well, universities have been at the forefront of this program for several reasons, one of which is that the faculties and administrations of these schools, as shown by two young colleagues of mine, actually, did a book on the ideology of universities, April and Matt Wisner. What has happened is that universities believe in this. This has replaced Christianity, Judaism, any other kind of religion. Multiculturalism is the religion of universities. The faculty at our school want this imposition of multiculturalism even more than the administration. And the same would be even more true at the University of Pennsylvania or Penn State or elsewhere. So universities have been at the forefront of pushing this agenda of intolerance. Second of all, universities have been blessed with all kinds of government mandates, government programs against discrimination. You have to avoid legal suits. In fact, you have to hire a string of lawyers and administrators just to deal with the government and the suits they're going to bring against you for discrimination. So one might say that universities have been the focal point of the imposition of multiculturalism in a way that other institutions have not been to the same degree.
Paul Gottfried, I want to thank you for joining us today on Inside Academia. I'm your host, Andy Nash. Check us out again on the web at insideacademia.tv. And be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Please join us again next week, as every week, as we take you for a look behind the ivory curtain.